All right, welcome to another episode of Panakal Podcast for Geeks, a show about good friends hanging out, talking about things we love. You all know my co-host Andrew Sides, who is
Hey.
on the left today. So this will switch at some point because it does that to us all the time. And our guest today is Chris O'Neill from Brotherwise Games. Thanks for being on, Chris. I've been
Hello.
trying to
Yeah,
get you on
thank you,
for a
Chris.
minute. Um,
Yeah.
I usually start off.
Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm glad you put it. I know you guys are super busy with your with all the Kickstarter stuff and all the Sanderson. I had to do a deep dive on some of the stuff because, for starters, I'm going to start out with the way I normally start the show, which is I try to figure out where you and I may have met, and it's very
Oh,
easy for
I'm
me
gonna
to
take
remember.
a guess and say Gen Con.
No, actually, I met Chris at
no.
Origins because what happened
Oh,
was
all
is we
right.
have a mutual friend named Brian Cullen. But what
Yeah.
happened is a bunch of people kept coming over to my booth and asking me to sign. Uh, um, oh man, what's the game called? The one with the little diamonds where you're building the mines.
On Earth.
On Earth, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
about 10 different people kept stopping by and saying, "Can you sign this game?" And at first I was like, "Why do you guys?" I was like, "That's not me," and I just would ignore them. And then by the ninth or 10th person, I was like, "Why do you guys keep stopping over here with this game?" And they're like, "You're the artist on this game," and I'm like, "I'm not." And I'm like, but then I realized it kind of looked like my style, so I walked over and spoke to Chris,
Oh,
and that's when I walked over to introduce myself to you and show you my portfolio and stuff. But then through
I
Brian, we started going to like dinners and stuff.
yeah. I remember meeting you there, but I don't remember getting to know you until
Yeah, we didn't get to really hang out till later.
oh no, you're right. You're right. I thought it was PAX Unplugged for a moment there, but it wasn't. It was Origins.
Yeah.
And we went out to a dinner with I think it was with Justin Gary.
Yep.
And Justin was showing us some games, and
He showed us
yeah,
what
we
became
chatted.
Night of the Ninja, which was
Night of
cool.
the Ninja.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is cool. That game is just keeps going, man.
Dude,
We
we
just
play
got a
that
bunch
game
of
all the time.
pre-orders in today. Yeah, it's a great game, but it's kind of been stealth succeeding for a little while here.
That's cool.
But yeah, I dig that game a lot for sure.
So yeah, it's like we got to go to this dinner with this game dev who basically was like, I remember we're all like drinking, hanging out, eating, and then he's like, "You guys want to play some games?" And I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah.
And I thought he was gonna just pull out some board games randomly from his bag, right? Like, since we're hanging with you, I thought he was gonna bust out like Boss Monster or something else. But instead, he pulls out like three of his own designs, and you're like, "That's cool. Let's go."
Oh,
Um,
wow.
Yeah.
yeah,
Justin's kind of famous for doing that.
I mean, he
He's
gave
just
me a
always got
copy
a
of it,
design
right?
going.
He came to my
Yeah.
booth at Gen Con, I want to say 2021 when we were first back at shows, and he gave me a copy of
Yeah.
it because he remembered I went to that dinner with him, and he's like, "You were one of my first play testers," and I was like, "That's cool,
Oh, that's
man.
awesome.
Oh
Thank you."
shit, that's cool.
Yeah. So, but I got to play. I didn't know Chris was initially. I've never met him, but I played his game, Boss Monster, way before I even met you. Like Boss Monster is one of my favorite games. I love the idea of games that are like compact. You can throw in your backpack. You can play with your friends. Like just take it to
Yeah.
go. Um, but I was looking through like list like you got Call to Arms and Night of the Ninja and Boss Monster. The three
Call
games I
to
have to play.
Adventure. Call to
Yeah,
Adventure.
Mm.
Call
Call
to
to
Adventure.
Arms. I don't know what that is.
Oh, I'm
Call to
sorry.
Adventure.
I wrote Call to Adventure. I read my handwriting poorly. These are my notes. um, But like those are the three games I started playing initially, and Unearth was one of those. The reason I started playing Unearth was, like I said, all these people kept stopping by my booth, and then I was just like, now I got to play this game because I need to know what's
That's
going on.
that's wild. Yeah. Um, I am blanking on the name of that artist. It
He's not.
wasn't.
He's
It
from
wasn't
overseas, I
you.
think.
Yeah. And he was not really a game artist. We just saw this art,
Hmm.
um, and fell in love with it. And of course, later on, everybody and their grandmother was like, "Oh, you guys just ripped off Monument Valley."
Right.
Um, and we were like, "We actually met this guy before Monument Valley like came out. Like we had never seen Monument Valley
Mhm.
before this. But then I saw Monument Valley. I was like, oh gosh, this
Hmm.
does look like Monument Valley. So no, we were never intentionally mimicking that style. We just really loved that voxel art, they call it.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful. I really That game was our second game. Second game. If you don't include expansions to Boss Monster, and it was the first game that was made by designers outside of Brotherwise.
Okay.
So Boss Monster was kind of like us sort of randomly falling into the game industry. We didn't know what we were doing. We're like, blah, blah, blah. We just, look, a game. Oh, look, a successful Kickstarter. Oh,
You
it's
felt
in
pretty well.
stores. We
Right.
fell really well, but it
Yeah.
was just sort of like all incredibly random. We had day jobs. I was in academia. Johnny was working in the toy industry here in LA. And I don't really think at any point we were ever thinking we would make a career out of this. But Unearth was kind of like that was the first game we really learned how to make games on, because suddenly the pressure was on to make another hit game, and um, we really learned how to do what we do with Unearth. So including, I think, learning how to make really gorgeous games. And that's always, art. We're a very art forward company. We've always
Yeah.
really prided ourselves on making pretty games. And Unearth was kind of where we learned how to do that. So
I mean, you
yeah,
just won an
we
award,
actually
right?
took it out of print.
You won an award for
We
Kwanchai, right? Or Kwanchai won, I
Yeah,
guess.
I mean, quote unquote, we won an award. Quan Chai won the Origins Award for best 2D art. I think I can't remember. Best game art. I don't know what the category is. Wait, I can look. Yeah, the category is best 2D art in a game, which is sort of a weird category for tabletop gaming. But maybe there's 3D art as well.
Sure.
And yeah, I have loved that piece that he did. Um, for Empire's End, and I sent it into the nomination process, and I have to say, when I sent it in, I just knew he was going to win.
Yeah.
This is the done deal. But he has never won a gaming art award
Which
before,
is
believe it or not.
shocking. When he told me that, I was like, I am shocked to hear this.
Yeah, right? I was kind of like, well, then you're not self-promoting, my man. And I hope he does, because
I
he
mean, he gets
deserves
to
a lot
work,
of
right?
awards.
Kwanchai's got
He
like
does.
some like 50 or 60 game covers, probably more at this point. Um,
It's a lot. It's a lot.
and he's
And
really good in the industry, right? So
he is. He's hooked in, and his breadth, man. I mean, he's got that Conchai style, but
right.
he's really able to he's able to create across a lot of different looks. Uh, he's got that magic touch for composing that sort
I
of
mean,
main image for something.
my first board game, which was Time Chase, was because Kwanchai was too busy. He was too
Oh,
busy.
they went to
Yeah.
you then.
Yeah, so then he told what's his name over at Renegade, Scott. He basically was like, "Hey, I'm busy, but there's a guy that does pretty close. He can do pretty close to my style too. Like, I don't look like him, but I look close enough to what they wanted." So he's like, "Check
Mm.
out Allen," and then they contacted me, and it's I was telling you about this later because Renegade contacted me before my first. It was like 3 weeks before my first child was supposed to be born back in
Yeah.
2018, and it was December.
Yeah.
And I remember I basically messaged my friends. I said, "What would you charge for this? What should I do?" Their deadline was super tight. So one thing I did was I asked for more. I asked for what I wanted, and then I asked for more time. And
Wait,
at
was
that,
that from me?
what? Yeah, it was you. and
I
and
was
so
like, wait a second, this sounds familiar.
we figured out the cost and we figured out the time. So then I was nervous because I was like, these guys probably aren't going to move the deadline. Like, I never told them that I was about to have a baby because in my head I was like, they don't care. So if you look at Time
Yeah.
Chase, that whole game is mine. But like, what ended up happening is I sent out the email saying, this is what I need. I need extra time to make the artwork because there's no way I can do. Their original deadline was like 2 weeks. I was like, there's no way that's going to happen, or like a month. And I was like, I need at least 2 months,
Yeah.
if not more. And then I said I would give you 100% of my effort on the cover, and I'll give you like 60% of my effort on the inside cards because again, you were pressed for time. Like, and I was like, you need this now, and I'll double time it, but this is not how artists work. We need time to make the pieces. And they never got back to me. So in my head, I was like, well, I guess I fucked that up. I'm not getting that job. And literally the day after the baby was born, I was in the hospital, and I get this email from them saying, we'll accept all this. We're good to go. Contracts coming through in a couple of days. And I was like, I remember I messaged Andrew. I was like, oh shit, they said
I
yes.
remember, yeah, I do remember that.
And then
It's a gorgeous cover.
thank you. That was the first time I learned to use good reference shots and set up all my stuff before I started working on the art, because that's like my
Was
wife
that
on the
really?
yeah, that's my wife on the cover by the portal with the
Yeah, I
paperwork
was gonna
flying
say
out of her hand.
it's you and her wife, you
And
and
then
your
yeah,
wife, right?
and that's me in the front. I
Yeah.
literally was, and now keep in mind it's like we have this newborn at home, right? So I'm like, I don't have time to like reference stuff. I have to like shoot my own photos real quick. And then I was like, wait a minute, she's a doctor. She's got lab coats. So I quickly like set up the camera, put together the lab coats, took these photos, started sketching, sent that into my art director. I was like, here's what I'm thinking. And she's like, that looks great. Let's go. I leaned on, and this is where, I'm always thankful for the art friends I had, because I leaned on Andrew for some advice on the business angle. I mentored on Sean Murray, who I messaged for advice on like the drawings. I was like, please tell me this looks good. Eric Wilkerson really looked over the cover and helped me with some paint overs, and like I got it done. And I literally, some nights I was working holding a newborn in one hand and drawing with the other.
Yeah. Oh God, I remember those nights.
Yeah.
Even
So,
with my kid, yeah.
and they
Jesus.
never knew about it, right? I never told my art director about any of that stuff, because in the back of my head I was like, they don't want to know about my personal life. They just want me to do the work. But my art director there was super chill. She was like, oh, that would have been good information for us to have. We
Yeah.
would have probably gotten you more time. And I was just like,
You
oh,
know what's funny is like when I think back on it, like I would have done the same thing that you did at the time, but I think now if it happened again, I would have been like, hey, deadline's gonna be late because I have a baby.
yeah.
You
Which
can
in
just give me
retrospect I
time.
should have done that, but it was my first time in
We
the
didn't think
industry.
about it because
Yeah.
neither of us were dads yet and had that
Yeah.
like viewpoint.
But and then a year goes by and I'm working on this. So I said I mentioned this Kickstarter because I'm about to launch my second Kickstarter next week,
Yeah.
but this time I'm working directly with some of the Kickstarter folks, so they've been giving me advice on what to do and changes to make. I'm not sure an art book is going to fund as high as I'd like it to, but they believe that it'll be just fine. So I'm just like, okay, let's go, because my goal is to get to the RPG next year, but they were like, let's just go RPG first. I'm like, no, because I have these stories I've done, and I have all this artwork I've done, and this is coming out first, But that first Kickstarter, like for starters, congrats on a ridiculously well done Kickstarter for you guys. The Cosmere RPG is beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah,
So,
crazy. Pretty crazy is the word I would use for that.
well, I thought you guys were the like I said, I did some research because I was like, man, these guys have to have the highest funding Kickstarter, but you don't. You're number 3 on the list.
We're number 3. Brandon, who is of course the guy we did the Kickstarter with, he's number 1.
Yeah.
And then it's the Pebble. Is it the Pebble Watch guys?
It's the Pebble Watch. Yep.
The Pebble Watch guys had like 3 of the top 15
Yep.
Kickstarters. I mean, they've done very well on Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's Sanderson's books, the Pebble Watch, the Cosmere RPG, a cooler, which I think never got made. It's a crazy ultimate cooler. Rumors are telling me it never got made. And Frosthaven, which is a fun as hell game. So, and then the list goes on.
A cool story. When we passed by the Frosthaven guys, we became the biggest games Kickstarter, not actually the biggest crowdfunding campaign. I think Awaken Realms has that with one of the Nemesis things on GameFound. But when we passed by Frosthaven, those guys, Isaac and the crew over there at Sofala Fair,
Hmm.
they sent us this really lovely email. They did this post congratulating us. It was an example of how cool the gaming industry can be at its best. I mean,
Yep.
it was just such a sweet thing to do, and very humbling as well, because those guys are big deals.
Yep.
So it was really cool. It was one of my favorite things about the whole process.
I mean, they're
Was
anyone who knows that team, they're really nice guys. Like Price and I became friends at the Origins, where I was the guest of honor that one year. I think it was 2022. They were just
Yeah,
across from me, and Price walked over and was like, "I really like your work," and he was like, "Do you want to do a trade, some playmats for Frosthaven, which wasn't out yet? They were the Kickstarter just closed,
right.
and they were going to start shipping in like 6 months." And I was like, "That would be great. That'd be awesome. Let's do a trade." And then he came over again. He goes, "Do you want a copy of Gloomhaven?" And I was like, "No, I already have it." And in my friends group, I have a core group here in Chicago where we're like only one of us needs to own Gloomhaven. We don't need 5 copies of it, right? So I was like, "We're good, man. No worries. I appreciate it." And I went to like the bathroom or something, and by the time I came back, he had put a copy of Gloomhaven and the little expansion, the stand, on my at my chair, and walked out. And my assistant was like, "Yeah, he said it's yours." And I was just like, "Bro, like I'm good, you know." And then he sent me, and then we just became friends over throughout the years now. And he sent me Frosthaven, and like every Gen Con, every like we're at PAX together. He will make it a point to invite me to their, those big parties. You don't just get invited; you have to kind of be a little. I feel like you need to be a little bigger in the industry, or you need to know the right people. The Price always goes out of his way to be like, "Hey, don't forget to get your invite. Here's, he'll personally message me, and then it's so
That's
like,
cool.
we're like Gen Con this year I missed out because I spaced on it, and you and Brian went. But last year I remember I got to the thing a little late, and the door guy wouldn't let me in, and they're like, "You have to go to that door." So I went to this other door, and then Price was like, I messaged Price to be like, "Hey man, your door guy won't let me in." He's like, "Stay where you are. I'm coming." And he literally left whatever he was doing at this giant event to like come find me to get me in, which I was like, most people won't do that. They'd be like, "Hey man, I'm in the middle of
Yeah,
something. Figure it out," like
that's cool.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know Price as well, but I know Isaac very well. He's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
Just they're all good folks.
And I know Ross through them because Ross used to be their original like
Yep.
marketing dude, and Ross and I have become friends over the years because he's, I've been to his San Diego. Yeah, San Diego. He does a industry party just to like friends to get together. It's all it is it's not even like there is networking happening obviously because all of us are in the industry and we're hanging out there. But the
Hmm.
main concept of it is just, hey, we're all in the same industry. We should all be friends. You know,
Yeah.
let's get
Yeah.
together. And I was like, this is brilliant.
Ross is the best at that.
He's
he
good.
he
He's
is
very
one there.
good.
Yeah, there's a couple of people you can point to as linchpins of the industry, people who hold the industry community together, and I would put Ross very close to the top of that list.
Yeah.
He's really really good at it.
I mean, he's one of those guys. Like, he also knows everything that's happening, and there's people like I was always shocked at people who like so like you guys both know all the crap that went down with that board game. I'm not going to talk about it, but stuff went down. But there are so many people, including like Ross, who like people that came over to talk to me and just be like, "Hey, I'm sorry to hear about this. Like hopefully, you know, um, everything clears up for you." And Chris, honestly, you said the best thing to me, which was my IP will survive all of that crap. And I was like, Chris actually, I thank you all the time for this because you actually went out of your way to get on a phone call with me, I remember, and we talked about it, right? Because I was just like, how would you handle this? What
Yeah,
should I do? And your advice was very sound, which was, you can be professional and tell them one thing and then just move on. And which is what I did. And surprisingly, they came through and handled some of the stuff. It had to, it went up the ladder and they handled it. But the amount of people in our industry that came over to me at Gen Con just to be like, "I heard about what happened. I hope everything's clearing up." And I was like, "I didn't tell you what happened."
I know.
Like,
Just heard it through the grapevine. Yeah.
but it's like that's
yeah,
the thing. Like, people don't understand our industry. I try to explain this to some to like my I think I was talking to my cousins, and I can't remember. I was hanging with a group of people, and I said, people don't understand our industry is like, if you think of it like a little village, and like people like myself and like Chris and like Ross and all of us are like in this little village right here. But then there's a little bit bigger village just on the outside of that village, which is like some of the up and coming, more newer artists. There, we're all hanging out and we're all kind of mixing. But outside of that, there's all the thousands of artists who are like, I want to be here. I want to hang out with these guys.
Yeah.
And it usually just stays in this core. All this, like all the BS happens to stay in the core part of the industry. And then the outside people get a sprinkling. The outside, very outer rim, doesn't know anything. Like they don't understand the inner workings at all because they're still just trying to like do a show,
Yeah.
And they hear about it from the rest of us, and they're like, some people are like, "Holy crap, that's shocking!" Like what happened to me. I've warned artists to be like, "Hey, when you sign a contract, make sure the one thing that's protecting me, that has protected me over the years, like because about my crap with my first book, is just making sure you have a good contract, right?" And some of these younger artists just sign. They're just like so excited to work on a thing. They like sign it, and you're like, "Oh, well, you should have read this part here that gave them the rights to everything."
Yeah.
Little things like that will bite you in the ass. But yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot in the last whatever. How many years have I been doing this? 12, 10. What year is this? 2024. So 10 years now.
Oh, okay.
So
What was your first gaming show?
the first gaming show I ever did was, so I did with my work was Origins. It would be the one
In what year?
2016, 2017.
2016?
Yeah,
2017? Andrew, what about you?
I started in 2014 though, doing fan art.
I actually don't do gaming. Like
Okay.
I've not gotten into it. Primarily, my field is advertising for film and television.
Okay. All right.
So
You got to come to a gaming convention.
I've been meaning to.
I
I
told
just
him to come
haven't.
to Gen Con, man. He would love Gen Con.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Gen Con is definitely one I'd like to go to. I have tried to get into the art show a few times here and there. Just it's so many people applying for it that it's like
That
it's a
is a
lottery
very
draw.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a hard.
it's a luck of the draw kind of thing.
Well, you got 75. Now you have 85 slots, and you have like 1,000 plus artists applying.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a real luck. It's the same. It's like the same as applying for like LuxCon, like the main show, not
Right.
not the showcase, like the main show. It's like the same kind of odds where it's like, yeah, it's tight.
It
And
is.
you've got to be really on your game to get in there. And even then, it might be like, no, you've done it enough. We're going to switch out you for someone else or something,
I mean, Gen Con
Yeah.
has a sprinkling of the same artists in there every year, which I'm just like, how about we rotate?
Shuffle them through.
That's one of the reasons I jumped ship to my own booth. In the last 2 years, I've had my own booth with the Argyles mainly because there was a hint of you might not make it in, and it wasn't because my work wasn't liked. It was because they needed to make space for new artists to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so if you're like, I don't do my shows on the fact that like I have to do the shows or I can't make the rent or the payments or something like that because that's too scary. That's a scary way to live your life. But I'd be sad if I didn't get into Gen Con. So now it's nice to not have to stress if I'm in or not. I just know my booth is there.
Yeah.
So I just show up and work. So. I don't know. I'm sure you guys did fine at Gen Con this year, Chris. Sounded like Oregon was hard.
Yeah. So it was interesting. This is the first year we had the sponsorship room. So
cool.
we had the booth in the exhibit hall, and we had the sponsorship room where we did like events and demos of the RPG and demos of the Mistborn deck building game, et cetera, et cetera.
Is that the room we all met you in for the?
That was that room, and that room was expensive. I think it was worth it, but Gen Con is in all honesty, Gen Con is the one show that we do where we make money. If you if you look at the overall profit, the cost of getting your crew there, getting your stuff there, the booth space, the room space, the hiring the demo staff. We pay all our demo staff, so
Right.
it's it is not a cheap venture. And so I think a lot of companies um, at our level and above, because I still think of us as a relatively small company, but companies at our level and above see conventions a lot of times as a marketing expense.
Hmm.
There are companies at our level and below that are able to make money at the con. They go for a smaller booth, doing less stuff.
Right.
They don't have to move as much product to make a profit. But it's it's not like a guaranteed thing. And I don't think we'll be back to Origins this year, to be honest.
Yeah.
We were finally looking at that sort of expense versus payoff and thinking like, yeah, this is not quite doing what we want it to do.
Origins is. I'm going back one more time next year, mainly because my friend Morris has a quad spot, so
Yeah.
he gives part of it to our friend Andrew Thompson, and he's giving part of it to me. And I said I'll try it one more time, but it's like I'm a little. That's why I'm hopeful that like these Kickstarters take off, because ideally what I'd like to do is less shows, right?
Yeah.
Ideally,
Yeah.
I want to stay home and make
Um,
all these ideas become a thing.
Alan,
Yeah.
am I mistaken, or is Origins like in your neck of the woods, or is it a
It's
ways
in
away?
Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not a bad show. It used to be, I used to call it like a mini Gen Con, like Gen Con Light, because it used to feel that way, and you can like literally show up.
Not so
And
much anymore.
it didn't like in the last couple years. It's like I do the only reason I would say I do okay at it is because I get to stay at a friend's house, so my overhead is
Mhm.
low as far as like room and board, and it's 6 hours from the house. So I drive straight to Andrew's house. I stay at Andrew's house, and I work the show, and I've got a nice booth set up. And then but like this last year, just like Chris was saying, it just felt oddly slow. I did okay, I guess, for a weekend show, but at the same time, I was like, I could have just stayed home, and like it
Yeah.
didn't. I felt a little bit like, and then I think Chris got sick from that show, I believe, and I didn't
I get
catch.
sick from every show.
I definitely caught something, but every test I went to said it was negative. So, but I was like, I feel like I'm dying over here, like, and it's like, there's also the bonus of like hanging with your friends and catching up with them, but also I was just like, it would have been nice if I made a little bit more money, for what was it? It's a 4-day show, right? So, um,
Jeez.
but since Morris has a space, I said I'll do it one more time. But some people like this guy, like my friend Morris, does a show like every like 2 weeks. I'm like, I can't do that. There's no
God,
way
yeah,
I can
I
do that.
look at that lifestyle, and on one hand, I'm envious because it's fun. I mean,
Yeah.
you're like a nomad. Um, but man, I find shows exhausting.
Yes.
Same.
They
Same.
they stopped being fun a long time ago for me and became work.
Yep.
It's not that I don't have fun there. I do have fun at shows.
Yes.
But when people are like, "Oh man, you get to go to Gen Con every year," that's amazing. I'm like, "Yeah,
You're
man, I go
like,
to Gen
I'm
Con and
working.
I work my ass off."
Yeah.
I mean,
It's exhausting.
us hanging out at the end of the shows is like, I love seeing all you guys and hanging out with you guys, but it requires an extra push, right? Because you've just worked a 12-hour shift essentially, and then you're like,
Yeah,
now I want to hang with Chris or I want to hang with Brian, and I need to like find the energy. Like this year's Gen Con, I think you met my assistant Shanna. Like, dude, we were in bed by midnight every day. Like, usually the artist used to hang at the Hyatt. We would stay up to like 1 or 2 in the morning, and then show up the next day
yeah.
to work. But this year, everybody around 11:30 midnight, we were all like, we should probably all go to bed because we have early days tomorrow. And I'm like, what the? We're all growing up, like we've all need sleep. I think Saturday was the only night we stayed up late because I hung out with you and Brian briefly on the couch over there after you guys got back from the Backer Kid party. Um,
Yeah.
and then literally like we stayed up maybe another hour because we were like our friends are still here and we might not see them tomorrow after the show. But like this, like I bet now every show's been this way. Like even So there's a show called LuxCon that happens in Reading, Pennsylvania every October. Um, you should check it out one year, Chris, if you like originals, like originals on the
Yeah.
walls and stuff, because it's all
Yeah.
fantasy art. There's sci-fi there, obviously, because I'm there. But it's all like, like the main show has got all these people that you probably really, I don't know if you probably know and like their work, like Donato Giancola's in there.
Boris Vallejo.
Yeah, Boris Vallejo's in there. All these big name
Boris is
artists.
still alive.
Oh
Really?
yeah,
Oh, he's
yeah.
alive.
Oh my god,
He's still
that
kicking.
blows my mind.
He's still doing a lot of
Dude,
great work.
he sits at his table and he sleeps half the time. He's so like, I think he does it because his wife Julie Bell's in the show too, right? So like, his sons are in the
And
show.
their I was gonna say their sons
Oh,
too, like Anthony
yeah,
and David Palumbo,
yeah.
right?
Anthony and David Palumbo are in the show. And then there's tons of like, what's his name? Michael Whalen is in there with the Dark Tower
Mhm.
stuff.
Okay.
So, but then there's the main
Used
show.
to be a few years back. Neil Adams he would go to it before
Yep.
he passed.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
and he's not been in the show, but he's attended it. Is Jim Stranko, if you know who that is.
I've never seen
From
him there.
Oh my God, you wouldn't miss him because he's looked the same for like I don't
Yeah.
know 30, 40 years because he wears like I don't know if it's a wig or not, but his hair is still exactly the same.
He's been at
He has
Spectrum
big
all
dark
the time.
sunglasses. He's at this one too. Yeah,
Jim.
he shows up at a LuxCon occasionally too. And you'll see him immediately. It's like, oh, there he is in his turtleneck, his sunglasses, and his hair. Got it.
Yeah.
And he's a comic book artist, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's a comic book guy.
He was one of those dudes that he did comic books for like a relatively short time compared to like other comic
Okay.
artists. And then he was like, I'm done. I'm gonna be a magician now. And
Yeah.
he went off and became a magician, and then he ended up doing like storyboards, like film and television or whatever.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
wild.
That's just wild, which is also very cool
Oh.
because I'm slightly jealous, like
Yeah.
like I always, people are like, if you didn't have your wife and 2 kids to worry, what would you do? I'm like, I would literally build one of those traveling Sprinter vans and just travel. I would like just try all. I wouldn't go too far south because of the risk factors, but I would stay up north and just travel.
He
live
did,
my
yeah.
life.
He did the thing is, it's like it's not even like he like went in with like a little like sploosh or whatever. Like he hit
Yeah,
the
he went
comic
all
scene
in.
like hard.
Oh yeah.
Like Nick Fury is like defined by him until
Yeah.
everyone started rejiggering for Samuel Jackson.
There's a couple comic artists coming in this year too. I can't remember their names though. They're newer and they're big names and they're coming in, but
until LuxCon.
into LuxCon. Miles was talking about an artist that he
Oh,
really wants
I'll have
come
to check
visit.
to see who it
Yeah.
is.
But
I think the
Brandon
main
was
show's
at
up.
LuxCon this year.
If Brandon's coming to LuxCon, that'd be amazing.
Considering,
like-
I wouldn't be surprised because like people like Michael Whalen's there. I think you said that, Alan. Like
Michael Whalen's there every year. Some of these artists are there, like so.
Yeah.
Scott Fisher's always there. Who these individuals have the same spot. They're in the same rows. Like so, like
Yep.
you just walk in, go right to Boris is always in the same spot, so you know exactly where Boris is. Donato Giancola.
I think Brahm is always there, or is he?
Brahm hasn't
there
done in a couple
sometimes?
years, but he's sometimes,
Hmm.
But also, Chris, there's another part of the show. Which they call it the main show, and the main show is where you get to meet all the younger or newer artists like myself.
Oh, you mean the showcase?
The showcase. I'm sorry, yeah, the showcase. And in the showcase, it's all original work too. It's all IPs and original work. There's no fan art and stuff in there unless you actually work for
You
those
you will
companies.
not. Yeah, you won't see the typical comic convention thing of like someone with
I'll send you some
6x6 foot booth filled to the brim with like
just
Prince of
prints.
Anime.
Yeah, you won't see the print wall or anything like that. It's all like unique. Like you'll walk into the showcase, and if you're like myself and you like collecting all this original stuff, you will like find. Like I usually save up every year to spend at least $500 or $600 worth, if not $1,000 worth of stuff on art at this show. But this year I have to curb it a little because, like I told you guys, I bought that guitar. That thing has set me back. I didn't think that through in the moment, but but like it's also one of those shows. That's where Wizards. The first time I really started talking to WotC was, my art director Zach Stella, who I was friends with, by the way, before this incident. But like he meets me at the show. I think it was 2020. It was 2019, and he literally was like, "Hey, have you ever considered submitting your stuff to WotC?" And I said, at this point, I'd given up on Magic. I was just focused on Ancient Ones flat. And I said,
Yeah.
no, because I said, no, I stopped doing that years ago. And he said, why? And I said, because I don't think my work fits WotC's aesthetic. And he said, I do. And I was really drunk. So I said, who are you? And he said, it's like, Alan, it's me, Zach. And I was just like, oh shit. But as y'all know, I did my first 2 cards this year because he finally came through,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm going to get more work, hopefully. But that show put my face in front of publishers and in front of art directors who work in gaming side too. And Gen Con and Origins can do that. Gen Con can especially do that for you, but it's if you want to work in that industry, right? Like, do you want to do games? Which, honestly, I feel like
Very
the board
specific.
game, it's very specific, and I feel like the board game industry, depending on who you're working with, some companies just don't pay a lot. Like, look at Fantasy Flight. They pay like $150 a card, and they want like top tier artwork in there. And their angle is
I
you're doing
think
Star
it's now
Wars.
$250.
Oh,
Possibly.
great!
Roll it in cash.
That's hard to believe. I'll be honest with you.
It's the truth.
I can't believe that, man.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, if it went up to
bad.
250, I'm shocked to hear that number because for years they would pay 150 a card. They would tell you you're working for Star Wars, and some of the art directors, what they try to do is give you advice and help you with your art. But I'm like, yeah, man, but that's not paying my bills. You got to give
The
me more
annoying
money.
thing is like they would demand that, but then
Right.
also demand like a WotC level of like finish, where it's like I could earn more money at Starbucks, dude. What are you talking about?
Right. Whereas WotC's got, they've got their flat fees too, depending on what you do, but they're what you would pay. Like if I did an illustration for
Right.
you, I'm gonna expect at least $1,000 per illustration. And WotC's up there. And it depends on the card you've got.
And the
There's
sad
different
thing is,
ranges.
it's like that's still technically underpaid, because like
It's
that fee,
better than most of the gaming houses out there.
but that also speaks, I think, to a larger problem where it's like the fees just have not moved since like the 80s or 90s. Like they've more or less stayed that price. But that's art in general. Like a Times Magazine cover is roughly the same price as it was in the 90s.
That's insane.
Mm.
Yeah.
But
And
I
it's like,
mean,
what are you doing?
with WotC, at least we get our as an artist for Wizards, we get our artist proofs as well. So there's like a secondary market there. Like we
Yeah.
can sell stuff there. And again, depending on the card you got, you can make a ton of money with your artist proofs. But if you're just a regular artist selling artist proofs, it's like whatever. Don't
Right, but you could
rely on
luck into like a very desirable card and
Yep,
because
exactly.
of the okay. Oh, that's cool.
Actually, is
Yeah,
the
I mean,
oh, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say this RPG, this Cosmere RPG, it's our first RPG, and art in an RPG is a whole other beast. So we're commissioning multiple pieces at different sizes. So we've got quarter page, half page, full page stuff that we're doing, and we're doing in a 350 page handbook. Every other page has art on it. So
And then it
it's
looks like you're also commissioning like miniature sculptors and stuff too.
for the minis. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Andrew, you should send him your portfolio.
normally for a game like a tabletop game, your fixed costs are much more approachable. They're not going to represent the red in your ledger, but the variable cost printing those games is a lot trickier. But with RPGs, it's a little bit the other way around, where your fixed costs are just monumental because of all the art and words you're collecting. But printing them is actually fairly cheap because they're books.
Right.
So it's been a really interesting experience there. And
Is the
I,
is the miniature side of that also kind of similar in terms of cost, where it's like it's a bad upfront, or it's a monumental startup, but then the actual production of it's not too bad, or like
Yeah, there's a little bit of overlap there. The sculpting costs are expensive, and then you do molding costs. So
Mhm.
for every figure, you're paying a molding cost that's anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500
Are you
Mhm.
guys
to get
doing it?
those.
Are you guys doing it overseas, or are you doing? Because I know like
Oh yeah,
some game companies do. I think it's called COcast now, where it's basically a like they have it in house, where it's like basically something that's like the size of like an arcade cabinet, and it's basically a smaller version of injection molding
we are
kind of deal.
not. We so the um, part of that's an issue of scale. So we've got
Right.
55,000 backers, and trying
Yeah.
to do anything in house would be crazy. But the level of finish that you can get out of a Chinese miniatures producer is just on
Yeah.
a whole nother level.
Mhm.
They've got fantastic equipment and lots of experience and know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we don't.
I
So
mean,
uh, that COCast thing sounds fun. I want one
It's
just
neat.
to play with
Yeah.
it.
Every time I've looked at it, I'm like, oh, that's fun. I can imagine because like Alan and I talk a lot. Like I do a lot of 3D printing and sculpting miniatures and stuff myself. And yeah, that's something I looked at. I was like, yeah, if I was doing a game company, that would definitely be something I would want to go into. I'd rather go into that and just be like, hey, I can make miniatures for your games. Let's talk, kind of deal, you know?
I mean, there's a
Um,
good sculptors are hard to find and always in demand. So
oh yeah,
it's if that's something you want to do, you can do it well, you'll do all right. It's a think of all the games with miniatures, and then think of
oh yeah,
all the miniatures in those games, and then think of how long it takes to perfect a single miniature.
yeah.
And so we've got a couple sculptors who do a good chunk of our sculpting, and when they're not available, we're scrambling. We're like, what do we do now?
yeah. What else do
Mhm.
we do?
Because yeah, it's really hard to find um people who are sculpting at the level of, say, a D&D mini. I mean, that's kind of the standard that you're looking for, right? And then there's a whole nother level above that, which is like the Nemesis guys and the
Like a
can't remember the
loot
various
crate.
universes.
What is it? Loot Studio?
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think who does the that game. It's just like these fantastic miniatures, but I'm
Oh, are you
blanking
talking
on it.
about Kingdom Death?
Kingdom Death.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking
Dude, those
about.
Hmm.
sculptures
Although
are
they
amazing.
they are amazing. There's some weird shit in there that I like don't need to see, but
Like, are you talking about when
by
you have
and
to like
large,
fight the lion and you have to hit him in the balls?
there's all kinds of weird stuff
I
that
know.
they've got. It's just not needed. But yeah, there's some fantastic stuff going on in there.
I still
Um,
remember I put together one of those miniatures as this dude, he had like an alligator, like the lip of the hat, right? So the alligator's jaw came out like this. And instead of sculpting that piece as part of the head, it was a whole separate piece that was so minute that you couldn't hold it in your hand. We had to use tweezers. And then my friend has what do you call those? Like an optivisor, but he
Hmm.
had like the dent his uncle was a dentist, so he had like a giant dentist one, and I was holding it under there with these tweezers, and everything looks way larger under there. And with like steady hands, I was like slowly just to build that to play. And then there was like another thing with like wings and like 100 little hands on it. And again, we
yeah,
looked under that lens because I'm like, there's no other way to build these things, you know?
Yeah.
But I was sitting there thinking, why not build these hands into the mold? It's probably way more complicated, you know? Um,
yeah.
Well, depends. Yeah,
yeah,
because
it
like,
depends on how you're building it, I suppose. If it's a 3D build, you could probably go bottom up, you know?
well, the issue is like, you run into drafting and all that. So
Yeah.
if there's too many undercuts and stuff, then you physically can't release it from the mold. Like
It gets stuck.
it'll
Yeah.
yeah, it creates mold lock and stuff. So
I
that's
mean,
usually why you have it in pieces like that, so you can do something like that. But the drawback of that is your one mold mini all of a sudden becomes like seven molds, or
this thing
Yeah.
came in
some of
lots
those
of
Kingdom Death
pieces.
things look like they're made of like 10 fucking molds, which are like,
They
this is
are.
insane.
And they cost like, they sell them at Gen Con for like, $50, $80, and it's like it's worth it if you got the patience to put it together. I'll put it this way: we put
Well,
about 10 hands on, and we're like, let's just pretend there's 100 hands on this because this is taking forever, guys. I still remember I went to the Reaper, Reaper minis, the metal ones, right?
yeah,
When I was in
yeah,
Texas once, my friend got me a tour of the facility, and they showed me it's old school, right? So they have these like rubber molds, and the guy was showing me how they like cut out little chunks of it, and then they attach it, and they pour the pewter through. And when you look at the
Yeah.
little pieces they're cutting out, you're like, it makes no sense. How does that turn into this? But
yeah.
that's they still do it the old way, which is crazy to think about. And there's just like,
That's awesome.
walls of like these like rubberized. It looked like little training wheels. These rubberized wheels.
Are Reapers are they all still pewter?
No, I
No,
think
they have
they're.
plastic
No.
and
I think they're plastic now for the
yeah,
most part.
Okay. I
they're
was gonna
mainly
say,
plastic. Yeah,
those guys have cleaned up on crowdfunding as well. Like they've had some huge.
I mean they're just so well known, right? They're
Yeah,
you'd be stupid not to be like. What's really cool is the Well, I'm going to talk about it at the end of the show, but I'll show you some of the minis from it too. I don't want to talk about it yet. It's not that time. Um, but I would like to talk to you, Chris, at some point about uh minis because I was thinking about making miniatures for my RPG, but it's been tasking to figure out like like Andrew and I talk about all the time, but time and then who's gonna make
yeah,
them, and then I need to get
Hmm.
samples made just to even just put in the Kickstarter, right? Just to be like, here's a thing that could be a thing, you know. And I think some of our friends are actually. I think one of our friends is in your RPG. Actually, he might. And we can talk about it after. So I'm not sure I can name drop people or not who are in there. Well, I can, right? The Kickstarter's done.
yeah, yeah. Who is it?
Steven Najarin.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Yeah, I think he reached out to you guys. He loves Sanderson. He's so like,
yeah,
I started reading Mistborn because he like so many people recommended it, but there's a level of I'm one of these guys. If you're like in my face too much and telling me I should read a thing, I'm like I'm not gonna read this now because you guys are. It's like Sanderson fans. I feel like are at this specific level. They're
they're
either like
rabid.
yeah, they're either like, hey man, you should read Sanderson. He's a really good writer, or like you have to read this. It's the best thing
Yeah,
ever. And you're like, please don't come at me like that. I'm going to read it. I got the book. I'm holding it. Calm down, And that's how,
that's
like,
funny.
Steven's one of those guys who's like, the Cosmere is the best. I'm like, okay, and it probably is. I mean, I'm learning about it now because I'm starting reading these series, right? Because in my head, I was like, um, um, so the people that, my friends that give me my booth space at Gen Con are really good friends with Brandon, Steve Argyle. Um,
Yeah.
and Brandon's the only one that could take half my space if he wanted it. If he shows up to the show, ever. If he shows up to Gen Con,
Oh, okay,
But
okay.
I feel like he will never do that because he's got his own like. Have you seen the
No,
setup?
I have. Yeah, no, he's got a 20 by 20 that's just incredible.
It looks like a little
Uh,
library when it
it
shows up.
is. It's got to weigh like 4 tons. It's so much gear.
I mean, he had it here at Chicago this year, right? At C2E2, and I walked through it. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
gorgeous. It's really well done. Yeah, I think the odds Brandon we were trying to get Brandon to Gen Con,
yeah,
but it Gen Con is so packed and so oversubscribed
yeah,
that their chances of finding space for anybody, even Brandon,
yeah.
are so low that it's just really challenging. So
Just
we
give him
we
part of
weren't
your
able to make
Brotherwise
that
booth.
happen. Well, we've talked about it.
Oh,
So we would need to get more boot space for us in order to make that worthwhile.
got it.
But we wouldn't need a ton more space for us to make it worthwhile. Uh, but boot space is like it's like food in the apocalypse. Like
Yeah.
you'll fight to the death for it. Like you're not gonna giving up your booth space is a big deal. So we're always looking for more booth space, and
Yeah.
as is everybody else,
I mean,
who came in at the same time we did.
I took my spot because when I talked to them about potentially getting my own space, it depends, right? It depends if they have the space. It depends if people are drop out. That's the only way to give me more space. And then this was a
Yeah,
surefire thing. So I was just like, the only thing that sucks is I don't get any points. But these people, the Argyles are my friends, so I don't see them. It's all under their name. They own that whole
Okay,
island.
got it.
They call it Troublemaker
Yeah.
Island. They own the whole island. But
Okay.
I've been talking to them about how I can get some points because I'm here. I'm working your show. I used to be in your art show for 5 years. I should be getting some points for being here.
Yeah.
Even if it's 1 or 2 points or however. I don't know how the point system works, but you know, whatever.
It's like this esoteric mystery. It's the point system is I mean the thing about the point system is that ultimately we're all playing the same game. So
Yeah.
my ability to get points on the same people who have came in at the same time, who have similar booth size and are kind of moving at the same pace I am. I'm competing with them. They've got the same number of points I do. My
Yeah.
ability to get that space is really tricky. That's why when I look at Renegade, I'm always like, how did these guys get all this space?
They got a lot
What
of
did they
space in
do?
there.
They got a lot of space.
So
They had to have done something tricksy. I don't know what it is.
I think they've just
how
been
did
there for years.
Gen Con works on a point system to assign tables and all that?
It's a priority system.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
a priority system. Yeah.
gotcha.
If
Interesting.
you've been there longer, if you buy more space, if you spend more dollars, you come every year, you support, you do more events, you donate stuff to the program, you get more and more points.
Higher up
And
the tier, yeah.
Yeah.
at the tier. So if the same request comes in from me as it does from a company that has more points than me, hey, we want more booth space.
Then they get
The
the
other company's going
priority.
to get it. They just get it. So it also affects where you are in the hall.
Yes.
So
Oh,
the more
really?
points you have, the more points you have, the more you are in sort of central to the Hoosier hallway. You'll be closer to the Hoosier hallway and more central. And we haven't really moved in location in a while. Not that we care that much. Like location actually isn't as big a deal to me as booth spaces.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
staying where you are is important because that's where people know how to find you that way. I think if you move
True.
around too
yeah,
much, it
that's a good
becomes a
point.
thing. Yeah. Like
That's a
now,
good point.
this year, people knew where to find me. Last year, people were like, "Oh, we were looking for you in the art show." And I'm like, "Man, I paid extra money to be in the map, and it
Yeah,
clearly did not help." So this year, I made sure I'm working with a marketing team, so I had them like just bombard my socials and my emails and say where I was, and that helped a ton. So
that's awesome.
yeah, and it worked to a degree, but I feel like every show has been oddly slow this year. I don't know, Gen Con is always Gen
Gen
Con. It's
Con was
busy.
weird. Well, even Gen Con Thursday was like, oh my God, it's the second coming. We're gonna make
Yep.
$1 million. And then
Yeah.
Friday it was like, what
Dead.
what happened? Where's
Yeah.
everybody? That was
And
a
then
weird that was a weird show.
and then
For
Saturday felt
sure.
slower than Friday, and I was just like, I think people were like, "Oh, it's sold out. We shouldn't all go on Saturday. It's gonna be so busy in here."
Yeah.
And then Sunday was fine again, but Thursday was like, I've never had a. That's the busiest Thursday I've ever had. Like my
Thursday
assistant,
was
I told her,
bananas.
I was like, you don't, I was like, rest up. You don't understand how busy it's gonna be. Like we're gonna be like literally every 3 to 5 minutes, we're either one of us was making a sale. That's how busy my booth is here,
Yeah.
which is a
Wow.
good problem to have.
Great. Great.
I'm like, great, buy it all. I don't want to go home with any of this.
Yeah, of course.
So, trying to think if I had any other questions for you. I think I'm all out of questions, man. I guess I could ask you what you have coming up for Brotherwise Games, and my best guess is your focus is all this RPG now.
Well, so it is true that our focus as a company now revolves a lot around Brandon. I mean, we're the exclusive games publishers for the Cosmere, which is his big
Yeah.
shared universe. And so just from a workload point of view, meeting that need means we're doing a lot of that. So from the Kickstarter, the Stormlight side of that will fulfill in summer of 2025, and then the Mistborn stuff will fulfill in summer of 2026. We have future offerings that go into his other worlds that are planned after that.
Mm-hmm.
The Mistborn deck building game, which just the pre-order for that went up on Brandon Sanderson's site today and sold out. We didn't have nearly enough copies that we should have had for that. So that game will be out in stores on November 6th. And then next year we've got Super Boss Monster, and we've got some other Boss Monster expansions planned. But yeah, I would say our company just as a whole has become kind of 70% Brandon at this
Yeah.
point. Just because we're not that big. I mean, when people are shocked to find out we're only about 5 full-time employees. And
It's
we
cool.
have an army of contractors, but we're all about the hustle. So we keep it lean. It's a small group. And we're always wishing we had more people, frankly. But you never know when the lean times will come. So we try to keep it tight.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, I can also see like you guys genuinely enjoy what you're doing too. Like I remember, and your brother like knows like loves all of it so much. Like I remember I went to that dinner with you guys at the I remember that steakhouse that we sat outside. It was 2 years ago maybe.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that place was called 3 years ago, but I remember like Howard Lyon Andrew walks by, and I got up real quick to talk to Howard, and I came back, and Johnny was like, "You know Howard Lyon?" I'm just like, "Yes." And
Yeah.
then like 5 minutes later, the Argyles walked by, and he's like, "You know Steve Argyle?" I'm like, "Bro, would you just come hang out at the bar with me after this, and you can meet all these artists?" And he did, and he
Yeah.
had a field day, like, and I
Oh
was just like,
yeah.
I loved it.
Well,
I'm like,
not just the Sanderson stuff, but he was a big Magic player for a long
yeah,
time.
I could
So
tell.
he knows a lot of their art from Magic and D&D and other games, right?
Yep.
Pathfinder.
Hmm.
So yeah, but no, Johnny is our Cosmere specialist. I absolutely love it. I'm also I've had the Kool-Aid, drunk the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I'll
So
admit that's where
I'm
I am at
fully
right
on
now.
board.
So I'm just learning about stuff because for years I've had Mistborn sitting here for years, but I've never like I'm so trying to catch up on this library of books. But
I
then
won't tell you to read it because then you won't read it. So I'll say, don't read
I'm
it,
actually
Alan.
reading it right now
No, don't
because
do it. Don't read it.
I
Damn
started
it.
reading it. I
Reverse
started reading it because
psychology.
I was like, I need to know what this is all about. And I'll admit it's actually pretty good. It's just like I'm waiting for that like where's the uptick going to happen for me where I'm like, holy
Yeah,
shit, this is why everybody loves this. You know what I mean?
they call it the Sanderlanche because it always comes at the end.
Okay.
There's like a lot of his books are a little bit of a slow burn, and then part 4 of 4, everything goes down. Shit goes down. It's like
Okay.
huge amounts of payoff at the end of every book. So
Cool. So that's something to look forward to, yeah.
look
I
forward to it. Yeah, it'll come.
Cool. Well, that's just like I said. I read a lot of I read a lot of sci-fi horror. So it's fantasy is one of those genres where I'm like, it has to be recommended to me. Like Lord of the Rings, obviously, I love Lord of the Rings, but other fantasy books, I'm like, tell me why I should read this. But
Yeah,
say it to me in a way where you're not in my face like Steven was, where I'm just like, you're making me wildly
yeah.
uncomfortable. Like, um, but Andrew, do you have any other questions? Because I went through my whole list, man.
Yeah, no, not really. I've just been enjoying like listening to all this.
Um,
Um,
It's
yeah,
definitely
no.
cool stuff, man. It's definitely cool. So wait, quick question about Super Boss Monster. Is that a standalone or is that something I can combine with my existing
Yeah,
Boss Monster?
both. It is both a standalone with some very new mechanics, and
Okay.
it also completely backwards compatible with your old Boss Monster games.
Amazing.
Oh wow.
It is.
We
It's super cool.
Is
Yeah.
that tricky to balance when you want to do a standalone to also have it be compatible with something in the past?
Uh, I guess. I mean, probably, but obviously we take our time with it. We
Right.
put a lot of it goes through a year of development and play testing and all that. And with Boss Monster, it's a little bit easier because we just know that game so well, and it's a
mm,
relatively simple game when you get down to it. So it's like riffing off a comfortable theme that you know how to play on your guitar. It's like, it's just it's not that as hard as it is for something if you were just fully improvising.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's cool that I sent you a photo when I was playing it last with my friends because I came in there and I said, check it out. Because usually our group of friends is 5. And Boss Monster is one of those games where it's like, this is a 4-player game. I'm like, not anymore. I was like, I got this expansion. Like, now we can all play. Let's go. So they were super excited about that. So, all right. Well, so I don't know if you had a chance to find something cool and different to talk about, but at the end of the show, we always talk about something new that we've discovered or something we're like, I could have talked about, Mistborn if I wanted to, but
Yeah.
so I was going to talk about a new board game that I tried out. Let me grab one of these minis so I can show you guys.
All right.
I got a ton of these, but I'll just grab. So
I've been something new.
So I've been playing this game called Marvel United.
Yeah.
Which is fun as hell, by the way. But there's hundreds of miniatures that come with it. This is the core. This is all you need to play.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you get the core box. So like my friend sent me a bunch of the X-Men stuff. So like their minis are like just phenomenal. This is Onslaught.
Oh wow.
They're like chibi.
Super deformed, yeah.
So they look like chibis. So I started painting them. So here's my Nightcrawler.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I love the sculpt style on those. That's a great game.
I would love to make sculpts like this in my universe. I just think initially I was like, that's cool. They got Marvel miniatures. But the more I stare at them, I'm like, these are so good. And I just did the Game Found one for DC. Initially, I was like, I'll just get the sets I want. So I spent like, all in is like $350 or something. And I was like, don't spend $350 on this. This was back at San Diego. So I bought like just the core, the Batman, and the Green Lantern ones. Because I'm like, that's all I really need. But then it was like $200. And my friend's like, bro, it's $150 more. Just get the whole thing. And I'm like, when you put it that way, like, I guess I'll buy the whole thing. There's like it's like this one I never got into till like a couple months ago. So,
that's awesome.
It's hard to find now if you want like the Kickstarter exclusives. So
yeah, that's the way that always goes down.
But Marvel United, man, it's like $20. You won't be able to find the Kickstarter exclusives cheap. They're all on eBay for hundreds of dollars. So
how does it play though, Alan? Like what's
it's a card based. It's a card game. So it's basically you have enemies. You can't see. This is too tiny. But you have enemies, and then you have the heroes. Yeah. So then you're basically just fighting to stop the enemies. You can also, I think there's a way to reverse it out, so you can do, you could be the enemies trying to stop the heroes. I think, but
is it a 2-player game or is it?
No, this one is 4 players.
Oh, okay. So you can have like 2 heroes, 2 villains, or are you all playing against?
I think you're all heroes trying to. You're basically all. The way we played it is you're all heroes trying to stop the villains, basically.
Oh, gotcha. So the game kind of runs the villain side on its own, more or less.
But I'm saying there is a way. I think there is a way to.
I think you can play them both. I think
you can play them both. Yeah, I've never tried it the other way.
That's cool.
As far as I can tell, there's no way to do. I've heard like on Reddit, someone came up with a way to play 6 players. I haven't looked into that yet. So this is one of those games when I play with my friends, they're like, "Oh, it's a 4-player game." I'm like, "How about you 4 play and I'll watch?" Because that's how much I think this game is cool. The art on the cards is amazing. The miniatures. I don't know who made these, but these are like solid. Like this Onslaught.
Yeah, it's very well done.
They're very well done. They're probably very expensive.
Yeah.
And they all have their own
Andrew,
bases.
what's your cool thing?
Yeah, what's your cool thing?
What'd you bring?
Oh, me?
You.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were asking Chris. No, I've been playing a video game I picked up recently that I've been eyeing for a minute. Alan, you saw it already in the Discord we shared together. It's called Shadows of Doubt. And it is the graphics are like voxel based. It's basically a procedural detective game. It's kind of like I don't know if you ever heard the game designer Warren Spector talk about this. He designed Deus Ex, the old Deus Ex, not the remakes or not the newer ones that came out. But he gave a talk a while back about where he was like, my ideal video game is an RPG that takes place just on one city block So it's not like super wide in terms of like, oh, you can go to like vast lands and all that. It's just like one simple city block, but the city block is simulated down to like the tiniest detail. So it's like you go into like every room, you can access like every drawer or whatever. And this game is probably the closest to that idea.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's like, and it generates a city for it. And it has all things like different cases. There's like kidnapping cases, murder cases. Some of the murders involve like a sniper.
Oh,
Some
so
of them
there's
are like,
multiple mysteries to solve.
yeah. So it's not just one. It's not just one.
That's
So
cool.
like, what happens is like you generate your city, and then you're just dumped into it as a gumshoe. And you just pick up cases as you go and you solve them, because the other like angle on it is it's like this hyper capitalist kind of like 1980s like Blade Runner vibe to it, though I
Yes, I
think it's
saw
like
the.
supposed to be, yeah, and I think it's supposed to be set in like the near future 1994 or whatever like that. So it's so their excuse is like, oh, like, climate change has made it so like all cities basically are like self-sufficient islands. That explains like why you can't go outside the city itself, like why it's surrounded by water all around. The whole world has become like hyper corporatized to the point where like the first corporate president, Starch Cola, has been elected
Starch
to
cola.
lead the nation.
That's great.
And so within this, like as well within this, like the police force has been completely privatized, and it's more or less kind of like they're not solving cases. They're more or less just like, I think they're
Right.
called enforcers in the game. So they're basically like, oh, we're just making sure that no one screws up anything for like the companies or anything like that. And so you work as basically a private investigator, because at this point in this universe, that kind of job as detective has been outsourced completely to people like you. And so
That's cool.
you're tracking down stuff. It's really neat. Because it is so procedural, there is like some weird, it's like any procedural thing. There is some weird jank that happens as you go on.
Yeah.
Um I tend to like kind of, if I'm having a fun enough time, I glide over that stuff and I kind of chalk it up as like, oh, like that could be immersive storytelling to a point or whatever. Like I have the same thing with like certain Bethesda games where they've got enough jank in them, but sometimes that jank comes together in a weird, unexpected way, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, this is like a weird story. Like one character I was tracking down, and I'll give like a quick overview of this kind of thing. So I was tracking down this one character. I was certain that it was him that had like killed this other person, but all I needed was like his fingerprints and the murder weapon. And if I could get both of those, if I could match his fingerprints to the fingerprints I found at the crime scene, I could tie it all together, and then I could throw the case into the closed case thing. Ended up being like a total dead end. Like he wasn't even the guy. But as I was breaking into his apartment, an alarm got set off, which meant like the police are on their way to come investigate a break-in, right? So I had to escape. The way the buildings are modeled is like, like in any stealth game, like there's vent systems and stuff that you always duck into to hide from people and all that. But they rarely like, they kind of connect like maybe one room to another. The vent systems in this game basically connect to the entire network of the building. And it's very easy to get lost in them. So as I'm scrambling through these vents trying to escape, I end up landing in someone else's apartment. And before they discovered that I was in there, which also caused a whole shit show, and eventually I just had to run out there as fast as I could. I was looking around in the dark trying to figure out where the hell I was, and I flipped on their kitchen lights. And for some reason, like this person had an inordinate amount of milk cartons, like
Just sitting in.
so many milk cartons, like I think 20 goddamn milk cartons in their kitchen, to the point where it's like, okay, this is serial killer business. Maybe this person's the killer for all I know.
Yeah.
And I think really it's just like a weird, it's just like one of those weird procedural janks where like the algorithm or whatever that sets up that thing was like, oh, like I'm just gonna populate this with this. I fell into that
Milk
because it was
cartons.
it's such a weird,
That's so
surreal
cool.
thing. Yeah, you're like, what is going on here? Who is this person that collects this many milk cartons?
I'm no
Um,
good at games like that, so I don't play those.
it's really good because like the other fun thing, this will be my last thing on it. It's not handholdy at all. You really have to like you know, like certain games, like you get the thing where it's like, oh, you unlocked like the gumshoe perk, where it's like, oh, now you can like detect 20% better or whatever, you know, shit like that. Um, this thing gives you a case board, and it's your case board, and you have to put like little notes up and connect them with dots, and
Old school.
it very old school, and as much as like it'll fill in certain things, like say if you have like the identity of a person but you don't know what they look like or anything, like if you happen to find like their wallet later, it'll fill in those details and be like, oh, like yes, this is William Williamson, this is what he looks like now, here, that thing's filled in. But otherwise, like you're the one that has to make the connections more or less. So
Hmm.
it's like, okay, this person, he died at this location, and these were the fingerprints I found at that place. There was a crumpled note in his wastebasket about like a tavern. We're gonna try and go to there later, but I'm gonna pin it to my board so I know where to go and all that. Yeah, no, it's very, very fun if you like any kind of like detective
That's
sleuth
really cool.
games of any sort. Yeah.
That's awesome.
What do you get the time,
Um,
man?
well, I'll be fast with mine. I recently read is a 10-issue run of Doctor Doom.
Oh, which
Oh,
It
one?
was by Christopher Cantwell. It was done in 2019. Salvador LaRocca did the art,
Yeah.
and I think
name
Doctor
sounds
Doom
familiar.
is a ridiculously stupid character. I've always hated Doctor Doom, but
Look at I'm
uh,
shocked.
but
Andrew and I both
but
shocked at that.
but I loved this. This changed my mind entirely, and I was like,
Good.
this is this is such a cool take on this character. I really loved it. It dives into it puts Doom on the run. So Doom, essentially, this series of things goes down where Doom is on the run. He's lost control of the situation, which for Doom is of course the worst possible thing that could happen, to lose
Yeah.
control. And it gets into the psyche of Doom, and I won't spoil it for you guys, but it looks like a redemption arc. You think this is a redemption arc, but it is ultimately Doctor Doom at his most essential. So I really loved it. I'm gonna go read some more Doctor Doom if I can find more, but I highly
I
recommend it.
can
It's
recommend it,
Christopher
Doctor
Cantwell.
Doom. I can recommend Doom
Oh
books
yeah.
for you. But what made you read this book, knowing that you initially did not like Doom?
I really like Salvador Larroca's art. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, the art is probably what brought me in on this. Like, I think he did a bunch of Ultimate stuff.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly, and I was always like, he's got this kind of like, uh, it's not hyper realism, but realistic line work, and um, does really great compositions. I just always really dug his art, and so I was like, "Oh, Salvador Larroca, I'll read this." And I got the app, whatever the app is called, so
The
it's
Marvel
easy
app.
to
Yeah,
just
Marvel Universe.
the
Yeah. That's
Marvel
what I
Universe.
read.
So it's a wonderful dive into older stuff, and yeah, this one's really cool. It's got a couple weak moments, but what 10-issue arc doesn't? So
Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean, I'll
recommend
send
it.
you. I think Andrew, I've told you about this, but it's the Secret Wars. There's a I can't remember what the event was called that leads up to it, but there's an event that happens where the multiverses are all colliding with our
Yeah,
the 616 universe, and then what happens is there's two left, and one is the 616 universe, and the other one's whatever multiverse is left. And when they come together, Doom essentially makes they have to make a decision on who's in charge of what when this happens, and it
yeah.
comes down to Doom and Doctor Strange. And Strange could have become the god, but Strange is basically like, I don't want that responsibility. So Doom becomes the god of this universe, and
I might have read this. I might
it's
have read
really
this. This sounds
good.
very familiar. Yeah.
And I like Doom, but like the angle they went with it, I was just like, and he's like all in white, So he's like this pure angel of a person, supposedly. He makes like Johnny Storm the son. He's married to Sue Storm.
Oh no, I haven't read this.
Oh,
Then
he
I
got
don't. I
the
haven't
world
read.
is super weird, man. He's got the thing is holding up. I believe he's holding up a mountain. I can't remember. Reed Richards does not exist in this world. There's all sorts of weird things. His
That's so
yeah.
petty.
Well, his elite guard, like he's got like you know like this elite guard of like you know like what like Crimson Troopers. They're all Thors. It's
Oh, that's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, so you should
That's
definitely
cool.
you should definitely. It's the Secret Wars. It's in the app. That's where I read it for the first time. So,
All right,
yeah.
fellas.
So
I
let's
better go get
call.
some dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
on.
Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me. Always good to talk.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And as always, it's good hanging out with you. So, we'll I'll let you know when this episode goes live. Probably be at a week or so.
Awesome. Thanks, man. And keep us
All right,
posted
man.
on the Kickstarter.
Will do. Have fun at dinner. Tell everyone I said hey.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye, man.
Bye.
Take care, dudes.
Later.
All right. Let me actually stop recording.